Okay, as far as laying out pattern pieces, I almost never follow what the diagram shows in the instructions. I almost always lay out my pattern pieces the way I want to lay them out. And so I have begun with the bishop front, and I have the fold. My fold line, my piece of pattern was cut bigger than, I didn't cut on my fold line, okay? Because I like to be able to see that black line, so I always cut about an inch away, if that's possible on a pattern. I cut an inch away from that fold line so that I can actually lay that black line right onto the fold. Now up at the top, you'll see that I did not take and bring the top of my pattern right out to my torn edge. And because a lot of these bishop patterns, there are some bishop patterns that the top is perfectly straight across, and this one, it has a little bit of an angle to it, and that is so that the dress will hang properly in the front once you get your smocking in. And so as long as you get your line onto your fold, and everything's going to be on the straight edge, okay, because you have torn your fabric, but you are going to cut across this line, which is going to have a little tiny dip in it. And you're going to be very careful to cut straight. These lines at the shoulder, it's very important that you cut as straight as possible, because you want, when you cut your back piece and your sleeve pieces, when you go to stitch these shoulder seams together, you want it as straight as possible so that everything runs through the pleater straight. And as you can see, I have, where I have clipped in, I have folded on that arm curve, and I've pinned my pattern piece all down, and I am ready to cut this piece out. I don't lay out all my pieces at one time and cut them. I lay out one pattern piece at a time and cut one pattern piece out at a time. So I'm now ready to cut this out. I'm not going to demonstrate cutting it out because you all know how to cut out pattern pieces. So I'm going to get this pattern piece cut out, and then I am going to show you my layout for the back piece. Okay, before I laid out my back pattern piece, I once again tore my fabric and got this top edge on the straight grain of the fabric. And then I laid out my pattern piece, and once again you can see I've cut my pattern piece bigger than where that line is. I'm using Betsy View A on this pattern, and so the back says here to cut on the selvage edge, and so I have my pattern piece lined up with this line on the selvage edge, and I have pinned it all the way around. And once again you can see my underarm seam, I have folded under the little tabs to the size that I'm cutting this out, and I've pinned it down on all the way around. And now I'm ready to cut out this piece, and I'm going to be very, very careful that this shoulder line right here is going to be cut as straight as possible, and that will ease in when you construct. So I'm ready to cut out. Okay, I've got my back piece cut out, and after I've cut it out, here's the fold of my fabric right here. And I want to make use of this piece of fabric. I'm all about using as much as my fabric and wasting as little as possible. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to snip straight across here and get this little piece that's on the fold. I'm going to open it all out, And I am going to take this, and on this edge here is the edge that I tore, and I'm going to take this edge that I just cut, and I'm going to take a snip into it, and I'm going to tear it across, and I'm going to get that so that that's on the straight grain. And you might need to take your iron and press that down just a little bit so that you get all the little wrinklies out of it. And so now I have a piece of fabric that has a straight grain on either side with a fold down the center. I'm going to bring those two edges that I tore together so that they are together. Now I'm going to take my pattern piece, and once again, my sleeve piece, I have left the entire pattern intact so that I can do a long sleeve sometime if I want to, or here's my line for my short sleeve. And I'm going to take this pattern piece and I'm going to lay this out on this piece I just cut. I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to fold it in half, and I'm going to find my center, and I'm going to put a little crease into my pattern right there. Now I'm going to take this pattern piece and I'm going to lay it down. I'm doing short sleeves. I'm going to lay out my pattern piece so that this cut line for the short length is right on that torn edge, and the little crease that I've put in the center is going to line up with the crease that is in this piece of fabric that we just cut. And I'm going to pin my pattern piece on. And once again, I've made little clips in the underarm, and I'm going to fold that under where those clips are so that I'm down to the size that I want to cut this pattern out at. And I'm going to pin around those curves. Other side, I'm going to fold under my little tabs that I cut. Pin those down. Alright, so now there's my pattern piece all laid out, and the very bottom of my sleeve is perfectly on the straight grain, and I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to get this pattern piece cut out. And once again, I'm going to be very, very careful that on these shoulder lines, these shoulder seam edges, that I cut as straight as I possibly can. And across the top, I want that to be nice and straight. And there's my pattern piece all cut out. And the next step I'm going to show you is marking your pattern with the important marks that you need for pleating.